Right. Good afternoon to everyone. This week was Mental Health Awareness Week 2022. And the theme this year was loneliness. We all feel lonely from time to time. Feelings of loneliness are personal, so everyone's experience of loneliness will be very different. We have with us today Shailin Shah, who is a happiness coach, speaker, and trainer. He is certified in the science of happiness and shares through Happy Life Habits. Happy Life Habits positively impacts happiness and well-being levels by creatively and uniquely combining personal development, the science of happiness, and spirituality. A bit about Shailin. Shailin was working for RBS in the finance technology department. He has experienced the challenges brought about by uncertainty, change, and stress whilst working for the investment banking arm of RBS during the RBS takeover of NatWest and the RBS takeover of ABN AMRO, and also during the financial crisis. He's very well experienced in what he's going to talk about. He has been doing a lot of talking since Monday on this very subject. So without taking any more time from you, Shailin, I'll hand it over to you to talk about loneliness.
Thank you. Just a quick thumbs up, Rumshpai, you can hear me okay? Yep, brilliant. So no, thank you for the opportunity to share with you all today. And Umashpai, thank you for this platform. I really appreciate all of you joining. And what we'll be doing is we'll be having a chat about a little bit about mental health and in particular about loneliness. And I'll share some of my personal experiences of both, share some of the science, and also share some of the things that we can do to help ourselves and help others. And then there'll be an opportunity for some Q&A with that. So, as Umishbai said, I'm a happiness speaker, trainer, and coach, trained in the science of happiness and through Happy Life Habits, positively impacting people's happiness and well-being levels. So one of the first things I like to do is just ask people this question. And I'd like you to take a moment to think about the question about to be asked, and if you're happy to, you can put the answer in chat, or you at least just think about it in your own head. And the question is, right now, at this very moment in time, use the scale of 0 to 10, where 0 is not very happy and 10 is very happy, and not using the number 7, but you're allowed to use fractions and decimals. Just take a checkpoint and see where you are on that scale for yourself. And here, everyone's scale is different. Someone's 8 by me, someone else is 6, but that's okay. And if you're happy to share and put it in the chat, please do so. Here, there is no judging of anyone else's number. Like I said, everyone's number is unique to them. And the real purpose of this question is for us to raise our awareness to see where we are at this moment in time. And as we become aware of where we're at, then the next thing comes in, which is choice. And if we want to change that number, then we can take action. And some of the things that we'll be sharing today, and some of the things you already know, are things you can do to change that number to be going upwards. So that's awareness, choice, action is why we are asking this question. And so we're looking at mental health this weekend. Today is the last day of Mental Health Awareness Week. And it's about raising the awareness on what mental health is. And the theme this year is on loneliness. So we will discuss those. I'm not an expert on mental health. I don't do therapy on mental health, but I've experienced mental health challenges myself, which I will share, work-related stress, grief, and loneliness and so forth, and the pandemic like we all have. So I'll share my experiences. I'll share some of the science I've learned and understood regarding mental health, or regarding happiness, regarding loneliness and connection. And I'll also share some things that we can do to help ourselves and help others. So that's what we're working with. So the World Health Organization has said that mental health is a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her own abilities. So that's really important, realizing his or her own abilities. They can cope with the normal stresses of life. So we don't even know now what normal means, and normal has changed for all of us, that can deal with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. And that's a really important one, making the contribution to community. So community is a big aspect of what we're looking at in terms of the loneliness aspect. And here we are part of a community gathered here today. So those are some of the, that's the definition of mental health. And mental health, all of us, is on a scale. And we can be at one end of the spectrum, which is not so good mental health, and having many challenges, and we can be at the other end of the spectrum where we have very good mental health. And we can be along that spectrum at any point in time. And the thing is, like with the question of 0 to 10, we can hopefully recognize within ourselves or in others where they might be on that spectrum. And if we feel we're not in such a good place, then we can seek help, we can seek support, and we can do things to help us move along along that spectrum towards better health. So like physical health, mental health is, you know, on a scale. The difference is physical health we can see. If someone's got a broken leg or is injured, we're physically able to see it. But mental health is what's going on inside here. So we're not always able to see it. And sometimes we might ask someone how they are, or someone might ask us, and we're fine. But really we're not, we're in turmoil. And so that's what we're wanting to be aware of. And what we want to be doing is being able to ask people with compassion and empathy how they are, and really listen and really understand where people are at. Not judge, but support and help, and similar with ourselves, if we're not in such a good place, to seek out help. So that's what we're working with. Another definition of mental health is to think, feel, or react in a way you need and you want. So that's a quite nice, succinct definition. And there can be conditions that affect our mood, our thinking, and our behavior. And any condition that disrupts an individual's everyday of life can be an impact on mental health. It could be the financial markets crashing, it could be loss of a job, it could be a breakup in a relationship, it could be moving to a new place. Any of these things can be a disruption to our day-to-day, and that can cause us to have a mental health challenge. So that's how some of the things that we are wanting to understand and be aware of. A talk I'd gone to a couple of years ago by Mind in Harris. Mind is a charity in the UK. It helps support people with understanding and with services on mental health. And there's different branches. There's Mind in Harrow, there's Mind in Enfield and Barnet, and so forth. And one of the things that they said that we can do to help people, with support is to ask people, how are you? And they might say, okay, they're fine. And then we ask them again, how are you really? So we're asking that question twice and really giving them an opportunity to be open and share. And we want to ask genuinely. When we communicate and listen with people, we do so without judgment. So not to say, oh, that's really terrible, or same thing happened to me, or anything. We just want to be listened and actively listen to them without judgment, because judgment is one. Judgment is and criticism are some of the factors there which can really add to the stigma and the worry for people. What we want to do is let people know that we're there for them at this moment in time and in the future. So we're there to help support them, and we're there for them. As we understand more, we can inform and give them support. We don't try to problem solve, but we can signpost them to services and support, and help them clarify what their next steps are, and we encourage them to seek help. And it could be a variety of different methods of help, whether it's some of the charities, whether it's the GP or the NHS or other things, or therapists and so forth. So those are some of the things there. This year, the Mental Health Foundation has chosen the theme of loneliness as their theme for mental health awareness. And what they share is that loneliness is a feeling we all experience. And this is when there's a mismatch between our social connections that we have and the ones that we want or need. So we might want to need more social connections, and the ones we have are, or we feel we have, are less. And so there's a mismatch between that. So we feel lonely. And we can all relate to this, where we've had moments of feeling lonely and feeling not connected because of this mismatch. It's also found that the warmth of our relationships throughout life has a great impact on our life satisfaction and health. And I'll share a bit later on how important connection and relationships are to our well-being, and share some science on that. And what they also found is that during the lockdowns, that loneliness went up threefold compared to prior to pandemic levels. Threefold, that's a huge leap in the number of people feeling lonely. And many of us can relate to this, where we were bound to our homes or to our rooms and not able to socially meet people or go out and interact. So that's been one thing that's been amplified and come more to the forefront over these last couple of years. So at the beginning of the pandemic in 2020, I felt moments of loneliness and wrote an article called Together in Isolation, and sharing my experience and experiences of others of the changes which were happening during the early stages of the pandemic and the lockdown, and things that we can do to help ourselves. And what I found was that the many communities that I was part of, which were for me a source of faith, of learning, of growth, of health, of service and social activity, they were all stopping their activities and events. So there's a badminton club that I was part of, a youth club that I was part of, all of those started stopping their activities. A faith school that I attended and taught at, those things stopped. Meditation circles I attended and learning circles, all of those things stopped, having events and activity. So all the things which gave me a sense of opportunity to go deeper into my faith and learn and grow and be connected with people were disappearing, and and were stopping. And I think many of us found this, that things were just being shut and venues closed and so forth. Fortunately, there were some opportunities for us to engage online, like these sessions here and other ones. So communities and groups were able to offer online services which helped that sense of connection and helped us feel part of the community and be able to continue some of these continue some of these activities in some manner, but different from the in-person face-to-face, but better than no connection and no interaction. What is important here is, what I like to share is there's 4 dimensions to the human being, or to health, or to happiness. And these are, the physical body, the mental, which is the mind. So mental health, physical health we talk about. So the body, the mind, the emotional and social. So emotional well-being and social, to do with our feelings and to do with our relationships and to do with love, and social to do with our connections, and the spiritual, which is to do with the soul. And all 4 of these dimensions are important. They're all closely connected. They're all which make up our happiness, which make up our health, and which make up us as a human being. We can't just concentrate on one, like the physical body, and just keep going to the gym and working out and that, and not address the others. And activities in one can impact others. So, for example, when we go for a walk in nature, it's a physical exercise. It helps our physical body. It can help us with our mind, where we're practicing mindfulness and listening to the birds and watching what's around us and looking at the colors of the trees. And if we're going with a group, we can be talking with the group and connecting and learning and socializing. And being in nature can be spiritual. So that activity done in that manner can help meet these needs. So again, if I flip back to here, all of these different activities that I had, which provided me with physical, mental, social, emotional connections, and some of these were one activity might give me 2 or 3 of these aspects, and another activity and different ones had all disappeared. And so I felt disconnected. I felt in a place of loss, and I didn't, I was not happy, and there was uncertainty there. But as I was able to put some of these things back in place, whether with an online offering or just as a family unit going for a walk and chatting, some of those things were able to be patched back in. So that's one key thing here, that these 4 dimensions are important. We need to nurture and look after all 4 of these dimensions and do things in them. And this next quote that I'm about to share is one of the most important ones for me regarding all of this thing. And it's by a researcher called Brené Brown. She's an author. She's done some TED Talks, and there's some really fantastic TED Talks she's done. And what she shares is connection is why we're all here. And it's what gives purpose and meaning to our lives. So to be connected with each other, and we're wired to be social, and that's what gives us meaning and purpose. Without that, we can struggle. And we know that as punishment, sometimes in prisons or in schools or elsewhere, people are put into isolation, or into isolation or solitude, and that can be because it does help. It disrupts that sense of connection and that purpose and meaning, and it's not good for us. So that's used as a punishment in some cases. But connection is so important. It's vital for our health and well-being. 3 organizations, the Greater Good Science Center, Action for Happiness, and the Museum for Happiness, have shared how important connection and relationships are. If you look at this picture of the brain, which is on Greater Good, you can see this, this blue part here says connection, and this part here says community. So community and connection, really important for our happiness, and that's all to do with relationships. Action for Happiness, another charity, has this acronym, Great Dream, and the R here is to do with relating. So that's to do with relationships again, and that connection. So again, it crops up, and Music from Happiness has here relationships listed. So again, relationships are important. And we've all had that experience during the lockdown where our relationships and our sense of connection and our sense of social activity changed, and we felt disrupted. But as we've been able to work those in some manner or another, whether virtually or with a video call, or whether to meet up in small groups, that's helped address redress that. But why is connection and relationships so important? So the research has shown this, and a researcher called Robert Waldinger, and he's again done another fantastic TED Talk on why relationships are important. And it's a 75-year study he's done, and he's the study was done from Harvard University on human happiness, and they took teenagers all the way up to their old age, and every 2 years they sent them a questionnaire and asked them to fill out things and checked and saw what was shared. So every 2 years, from their teenage age up to their 70s, 80s, 90s, over a 75-year period, they did this study. And what they found were these three lessons. Oh, sorry, what they found was our social connections are most important for our well-being. So it's not even like in second place or third place, it's most important for our well-being. What they found, those who lived long and had, good health had really good social connections. The lessons they found from this were three. So one is social connections are better for our health and our well-being. And they say, without it, loneliness kills. Two, high quality connections are better than quantity. So you don't necessarily need lots and lots of connections and lots of people, but you need a few good high quality ones to help in that. And good relationships are good for the body and for the brain, is what they found. And some of you may have come across the idea of blue zones, which is another study done, where they looked at different areas in the world. So there was Okinawa, there was a place in Sicily, and there was a place in California, where they saw that these people were living, on average, there were more people living to an older age and living happier and living healthier lives. And there was various things related to that. There was movement and exercise, there was diet. But one of the other key things that they found was in all of these three different communities, a sense of connection and belonging was paramount. So different studies have found and shown that these things are so important for us. From a book called The 10 Keys to Happier Living by Action for Happiness, written by a researcher called Vanessa King, I'll share some of the science, which just highlight and emphasis. So with relationships, we feel connected, it's vital to our well-being, and it helps to combat loneliness and mental health. It gives us a sense of belonging and identity. It gives us significant health benefits and helps increase our resilience, helps us live longer, helps us feel loved and being loved, and it helps our learning, growing, and our development. And it gives us a sense of meaning, and it gives us an option to enjoy things with other people. So loneliness is something which can impact us and can be detrimental, but by being aware of our social connections and seeing how important social connections are to our happiness and well-being and to our health, we've got to focus on doing the things which help increase our social connections and our happiness, and also be aware that if someone is feeling lonely, we can help them to feel less lonely. So that's that part. I'm going to just change tack slightly and talk about stress. So loneliness is one aspect of mental health, and that's the theme this year. But also another aspect of related to mental health is stress. And we all experience stress. Stress in itself isn't bad. It's it's part of our it's an evolutionary function which helps us survive. It's the way of the brain and the body to protect us in case of a threat or a danger. And when it perceives there's a threat or a danger, what the brain does to protect us is it releases stress chemicals, adrenaline and cortisol, to get our body to have those get our muscles ready to either fight or to have the energy to run, or it causes us to freeze. So fight, flight, or freeze. But yeah, that's what happens when we can experience stress. So stress in itself is not bad, but what happens is it's when our body is experiencing stress continuously over a long period of time that it becomes a problem, chronic stress. So it's the way of the body protecting us, but when it goes over a long period of time, that's when it's detrimental. And on the little image here, you can see some of the things that can happen with the body: headaches and skin irritations, and changes in breathing. In the mind, worry and negativity and not able to think can happen. Making wrong decisions. Our sense of self-esteem and confidence can disappear. We can feel disconnected and irritable, and behavior-wise, we can become snappy or resort to substance abuse to help relieve that stress, change in appetite, and not being able to sleep. So lots of impact of stress can occur. And I've shared, in the pandemic, how I felt lonely and, uncertainty and these changes. And as Umesh introduced, I worked for RBS in IT, and through the various changes and during the financial crisis and thereafter, as the bank went through changes and it went for a takeover, the culture changed, things changed, and in that environment, I experienced stress. So I was working long hours. I was in a role that was asking more of what I could give. I wasn't trained to deliver that role or support myself or be supported to develop into delivering that role. So I felt overwhelmed. I felt on my own. I couldn't focus. I wasn't eating properly and had meetings lunchtime and not taking a proper break. I felt I couldn't turn to people and talk to them. I felt depressed, no sense of support, and on occasions, just through worry and lack of sleep and working silly hours, having to call into work and say, look, I can't come in because I can't think, I can't function. At that time, I didn't know I was suffering from stress. What happened was I needed to visit the GP, and they had diagnosed it as stress and depression. So an example that I often share, where you can see that glass of water, is that glass of water. Let's say it's 250 mils. We could hold that glass of water for a few moments without any problem. All of us could, hold that glass of water for a few minutes, no problem. We could possibly hold it, arms outstretched, that glass of water for, the duration of this whole, a talk. But could we hold it for the rest of the day or the rest of the week? Arms outstretched without taking any sip from it, hold that glass of water? No, we would end up with a pain in our arm by holding onto that water, and it would ache and it would hurt, and it would cause problems. What that water represents in that glass is our worries and our stress, and allowing for no evaporation or anything else. That's 250 mils would still be in there. That hasn't changed. The problem is not the amount of stress or the amount of water we're holding, it's how long we're holding it for. That's the problem with stress. So what we've got to learn to do is that glass of water or that bottle of water, we've got to learn to put it down. Let go of it, put it down, now and then, refresh ourselves before we pick it up again. So it's not a case of avoiding stress. It's a case of stress will be part of our lives. It's being aware of that stress, but not holding on to it for a long, long time, becoming aware of it, learning to put it down, replenish ourselves, nourish ourselves, and then pick it up again. And this is what I need to do. And visiting the doctor to identify what was going on was one part. Then being written off from work was another part to give me that break from that regular cycle. That helped. And it took a few days, to just gather myself. And what I did in that time out was I went swimming. I went for walks. I practiced mindfulness and just being aware of what was around me, of my senses, of my thoughts. And I wasn't thinking about work. It took a few days. I focused on my breathing, because when we don't breathe deeply, and we can be stressed, and we can relax ourselves by breathing deeply, slowly, and getting our parasympathetic system, our calming processes in place. I took time to reflect on what were the things which were important to me, and consider my values, and also my self-esteem had been knocked by not being able to perform in this role. So I had to remind myself of my skills, my abilities, and my knowledge, and rebuild my self-worth, self-esteem. And I spoke and talked to people to better understand and express myself and discuss. Discussing, and I continued volunteering, and that helped to help put the glass down and not think about my worries and help others. And those are some of the things which help. Now, all of these things, are important to help. And here's some more science that I'd like to share. So some of you would have heard of the happy chemicals. So there's dopamine, there's oxytocin, there's serotonin, and there's endorphins. And each of these does a function in the body. But the key thing here is when these are low, we can feel depressed, we can feel a lack of enthusiasm, we can feel low social interaction and relationships, loneliness, and we can feel stress and anxiety. So when these happier chemicals are low, and the adrenaline and the cortisol are more, we can feel these things. So what we've got to learn to do is boost these. Put the bottle down to stop, more stress filtering in, and learn to do things which can then boost these happier chemicals and flush out the stress ones. And the things we can do is, setting goals, having something to work towards, meditation and mindfulness. For eons, ancient wisdom has said that's good for us. Practice of gratitude is fantastic. Acts of kindness and compassion, hugs and contact, which, all of these things had disappeared during lockdown. But if we are able to do some of these things, they can help release these happy chemicals and help us feel better and happier. Gifts and gratitude, sunlight when we have it, spend time there, some dark chocolate, exercise, massage, all of these things help. Regular exercise, laughter, medication, and spicy foods. And all of these things are things we can do. We've got control over these things to build these into our lives and to be able to do these things. So that's what we want to do, is have these boosts happen. And what we want to do is actually build these in throughout the day, from morning till evening, and have something from each of these different columns happening to help, maintain our happiness level and help, reduce the stress that we can feel. And a couple of other things to increase happiness, because by increasing the happiness, we can, reduce the depression, we can reduce the loneliness, and I've used happiness as a generic term here, is through practices. There's mindfulness, which we just touched upon and saw, it helps release the happy chemicals. There's kindness, which we saw, releases the happy chemicals, and there's gratitude, which we saw. If you look at the orange on the screen, all of these help reduce stress. They help reduce the cortisol in our system and help increase our immune system. There's many other benefits to these, but that's a massive one. They can improve our sleep, lower blood pressure and so forth, reduce depression and loneliness, acts of kindness when we're connected with others, and also, by practicing gratitude and doing a lot of gratitude, what they found was that people who are suicidal patients, by practicing a lot of gratitude, the feeling of hopelessness was less in 88% of them, and increased levels of optimism in 94% of them. So in effect, a letter of gratitude could have saved some people's lives by practicing that. So those are some of the things that we can do to help. For me, one of the big ones is gratitude in journaling. And I share this, I've been doing it for 7 years, and I train people to do this. The reason why gratitude in journaling is so powerful is it helps our mental mind. So it helps with our mental health as well as our emotional health, for sure. When we get the stuff out of our heads and we're journaling it, we're putting it down, we're getting out of our heads. By writing things and thinking it through, it allows us to process it. It allows us to hopefully distance ourselves from a little bit, and allows us to seek solutions instead of seeing it as seeing problems. And it gives us a sense of connection. And that's more so if I share this one. When we practice gratitude, what we're often focused on, or what most of us spend our lives doing, is thinking about me, myself, and I, me, and our ego. We're just thinking about what's in it for me, and what can I get? What's the gift for me? And when we get given a gift, or get given something, that's what we're looking at. But when we practice gratitude, what we're doing is we're seeing everything as a gift. We're seeing everything as a blessing in our lives, and we thank, we thank for those blessings and those gifts that are in our lives. But in doing so, what we also do is we think about what that gift is, us as the recipient, what that gift is, and also where that gift has come from. Who's the giver of that gift? Whether it's a neighbor, a family, or a friend, or a work colleague, or someone from the community, or nature, or God, if you believe in God. So we think about those things when we think about gratitude, and that helps our mental well-being. It helps our emotional well-being, and in thinking about who the giver of that gift is, it helps us feel more connected. So it stops us from feeling alone. I've shared this a few times, and what I love about gratitude, positive emotions, is that there are habits of the heart, and I feel good and I feel more productive, and I can't be sad at the same time, or depressed or angry when I'm feeling gratitude or happy. And they've helped me through stress, through grief, through mental health, and through relationship challenges, and help me to say yes to opportunities and not just be stuck with problems, to see solutions, to see opportunities. And what it does is it amplifies the good that's already in our lives. It helps rescue us from negativity and struggles, and it fosters connection, as I just explained. It heals, it gives us hope, it helps us feel less deflated, it gives us a sense of optimism, and it reduces stress, and it allows us to cope with daily challenges. And so bringing it all back to loneliness, we are part of the problem. There's almost 8 billion people on this planet. So why does loneliness exist? Why should it exist? It shouldn't exist with 8 billion people on this planet. We are part of the problem, but we are also part of the solution. And we have the responsibility, we have the capability or the agency, and we have now the knowledge of why relationships are important and loneliness is bad, and we can do the things, and it just takes a little bit to do, and it's being a little bit more friendlier, a little bit more kinder, a little bit more aware, and a little bit more connected. So friendlier, kinder, aware, and connected. So awareness links to mindfulness, connected links across all of those, kinder and gratitude, and all of those things help. So all we need to do is be a little bit more so of these things that we already are, and do with a bit more purpose and a little bit more awareness. And all it takes is a genuine smile, a hello, or a how are you. So as we go about our day to day, and we see someone walking past us, we can smile to them. We can say hello. We can ask how you are. We can, when we're shopping, we can ask at the checkout the people we're interacting with, or when we're getting onto the transport, we can ask these things and check in with these things. So it gives us that option to connect with people, and it's good for us, as I've already shown. Mindfulness, kindness, and gratitude help really reduce our stress and help us sleep better and help release the happy chemicals within us. In doing so, as we connect with others, we can help them reduce those things as well and increase their happy chemicals and help them feel connected, because we really don't know what's going on inside people's heads. We really don't know if people are feeling very lonely. There is a self-care infographic I put together earlier this year. We just got some great themes in there and things that we can do. So, the spiritual and faith, there's health and nature, there's talk about routines, there's talk about controlling the controllables. This is something that, you can use as something to remind you when you're either feeling down or you need an idea to pick you up, or to do an activity or something, laughing yoga, and all of these things are there. So it's there as a resource that you can use, and it's on that Happy Life Habits website, where there's an article all about mental health awareness. So various recordings that we've done over this week on different aspects of mental health awareness are there. There's TED Talks and other things on loneliness that I found really beneficial and useful, links to articles and so forth, and this infographic is there. So if you are looking for some resources to help yourself or help others, there's one place you can go where you can find some of these things. And I'd like to share a story with you, which I'm going to share the story about contact and connection. This story, I think, really resonated with me and hopefully resonates with all of you as well. And so there was a monk from the Ramakrishna mission who was being interviewed by a journalist from New York. And the journalist started interviewing the monk as planned earlier. And the journalist said, "Sir, in your last lecture, you told us about contact and connection. It's really confusing. Can you explain?" So the monk smiled and, apparently deviating from the question, asked the journalist, "Are you from New York?" And the journalist said, "Yeah." And the monk said, "Who are there at home?" And the journalist felt that the monk was trying to avoid answering his question about contact and connection, since this was a very personal question and an unwarranted question to him. Yet the journalist said, "Mother has, expired, father is there, 3 brothers and 1 sister, all married." The monk, with a smile on his face, asked again, "Do you talk to your father?" The journalist looked visibly annoyed, and the monk, further went on to say, "When did you last talk to him?" The journalist, suppressing his annoyance, said, "Maybe a month ago." And the monk said, "Do your brothers and sisters meet often? When did you last meet at a family gathering?" At this point, sweat appeared on the forehead of the journalist. Now, who is conducting the Zoom to you, the monk or the journalist? It seemed the monk was interviewing the journalist. With a sigh, the journalist said, "We met last at Christmas 2 years ago." Many of us can relate to this. The monk said, "How many days did you all stay together?" And the journalist, wiping the sweat on his brow, said, 3 days. The monk said, "How much time did you spend with your father sitting right beside him?" The journalist looked perplexed and embarrassed and started scribbling something on paper. The monk said, "Did you have breakfast, lunch, or dinner together? Did you ask how he was? Did you ask how his days are passing after your mother's death?" Drops of tears started, to flow from the eyes of the journalist. The monk held his hand and said, "Don't be embarrassed, upset, or sad. I'm sorry if I hurt you unknowingly, but basically, the answer to your question about contact and connection is this: you have contact with your father, but you don't have connection with him. You are not connected to him. Connection is between heart and heart, sitting together, sharing meals, and caring for each other, touching, shaking hands, having eye contact, spending some time together. Your brothers and sisters have contact, but you have no connection with each other." The journalist wiped his eyes and said, "Thank you for teaching me a fine and unforgettable lesson. This is the reality today. Whether at home or in society, everybody has lots of contacts. We've got lots of Facebook friends, we've got lots of contacts in our phone, but there is no connection, no communication. Everybody's in his or her own world. Let's not just maintain contacts, let us remain connected. Connection is the most important thing. It gives us meaning and purpose to our lives. Let's spend time together, caring and sharing. And that, by the way, that monk was none other than Swami Vivekananda. So we will, move on to Q&A.
Thank you very much, Shailin. That was an excellent presentation. If anyone's got any questions, please put them in the chat and I'll read them out to Shailin. And we'll take each question as they come. Loneliness, I think a lot of people, as Shailin, as you said, right from the onset of the pandemic, and once we went into lockdown, You know, there are a lot of people who went through a lot of tough time because they were just literally within the four walls. Previously, they were able to meet up with friends, meet up with family, but now none of that. And just to let you know, I when we went into lockdown, first lockdown, I received a lot of calls from elderly people, from friends, who said to me that it's really difficult for them. And that's when I started my Sunday Life and Learn talks. And it's been going on, but it's um, I felt it had to be done because this was probably one way of getting people together, people learning a little bit more about various different health aspects. So but uh, pandemic has not helped the situation. It's always been there, but pandemic has just made it
Amplified it.
worse.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah. Like we said, it's loneliness has gone up threefold. And I actually, Umesh, on my behalf, as well as the audience, I'd like to thank you and say we're grateful for you to provide this service every week to allow people to connect, to learn, because you're touching all of those different four dimensions I talked about of health. So yeah,
thank you.
it's a wonderful service, and I appreciate and grateful for you to provide this.
Thank you. We got a comment here from Harish. And what he's saying is absolutely right. When you are depressed, you do not feel like talking to anyone, let alone connect to anyone. And it is so true. I think, you just want to be left alone. And I think what happens, it's a vicious circle. You want to be left alone. You don't want to connect with people. You don't want to talk to anyone, but that leads to more stress, leads to depression, and the circle is never ending, and there needs to be some way of breaking that circle. And any thoughts on that, Shailin?
Yeah, no, absolutely, and you are right. We can feel like that, and um, some of the things about feeling depressed and not wanting to relate to grief as well, which can play on mental health, and we'll do a talk on that another time. But with what we've just shared now, Harish, I hope you understand some of the aspects of why we can feel depressed. Those happier chemicals being less, and the stress and uncertainty ones, or feeling uncertainty, and those stress ones being more so, or some factors. There could be other factors as well, medical wise, and this, that, and the other. But with that understanding, we know where we are. With what we've just shared, we've shared how important it is to connect. So, as I said, with right at the beginning, with the smiley face and the 0 to 10, if we ask ourselves where we're at, we become aware. Then, if it's not where a number where we want to be and we want to change it, with the learning we've done here, with the understanding we have, we can reach out, we can make a choice, and we can reach out and we can get support, or we can, say to someone, I'm feeling like this. Now, please, can we go for a walk and go for a chat? Similarly, on the flip side, if you are aware of someone who's perhaps going through feeling depressed, feeling lonely, are on their own, we can reach out to them, ask them if they want to go for a walk or a cup of coffee, and just be there, be in their presence, ask them if they want to share anything. If they do, fine. If not, fine. We don't have to judge, and we don't have to give advice. We check in where they are, and just sometimes being in someone's company can make a difference to them. So that's part of it. The other thing is, with what we've just shared also, and the company I've got is called Happy Life Habits. So it's about building these habits into our life. And what we want to do is, our phone, it becomes under 50%, we go charge it. We don't even wait for 10 or 20%. Under 50%, we go charge up our phone. And we plug it in. What we want to be doing is building habits which nourish us, which replenish us, which help us be able to deal with life challenges better, and help rewire our brain and be building those at a point when we don't need to have them. So it's prevention instead of cure. So and it's not a case of you won't feel depressed, but you might feel less depressed than you would have otherwise, and build up our resilience and so forth. So if you are aware, you're feeling depressed, make a visit to the GP and get it diagnosed, and let them, signpost you to services. Talk to family and friends. Reach out, seek support, and there's lots of material available online. And work it as best we can, and help others as well.
Thank you, Shailene. Thank you for that. We got another comment question. On Instagram and other social media, we are instructed to cut negative or draining people out of our lives. Therefore, when somebody asks, "How are you?" the person says, "I'm fine," rather than answer truthfully that the person's miserable, or else he or she will be cut out of the entire social media. Is this a reasonable line of thinking?
So I haven't fully understood.
I think basically the question really is that I think you have to be you have to lie to people. Otherwise, if you don't lie, and if you say everything's okay, everything's not okay, that they are feeling pretty down, they'll be considered as negative people, and people do not want to talk to them. And I think that's what the question is. Is that so? The thinking behind this person, what he or she is saying, is that so they have to lie in order to be part of that group.
Okay,
Is that a reasonable line of thinking?
it's a line of thinking, and it's what many of us do, and we do things to fit in and conform with others, because if you stand out, you are different and you're not normal. But for me, that RBS experience I shared of the work-related stress, I was doing things which were working against my values. So my values are, connection and family, and spending time with people and doing meaningful stuff, and and serving, and all of those things, weren't happening or were being disrupted. And so, but I felt out of whack because I was doing things which were against my values and my thinking, or my way of being. If the question you've got to ask yourself is, if you are going to be lying to fit in with these people, is it worth fitting in with them? Or is it time to find a new tribe? And there are plenty of people out there, plenty of tribes who are positive, supportive, like-minded. And if those things are important to you, then you can seek out and find them. And I would say, social media has its uses, but we can all feel depressed. I'm on social media, on Insta, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and got groups on there. And I've got a Happy Life Habits community group, which is all about positivity and the stuff we share here, and we share positive quotes. But when I'm often on social media, I might see someone else who's got a new book released, or I might see someone else who's got X number of followers, and I'm thinking, why have they got that? And you start judging and you start criticizing. You start judging and you start putting yourself down. What you've got to remember is, ignore everyone else, forget everyone else, be aware of what's important to you, and be authentic to yourself. And in doing so, it might mean cutting out some people from your life, or spending less time with them, and spending more time with people who support and nourish you and help you to be the person you are meant to be.
So important, isn't it, that you connect with the right people?
Yeah.
And to whom you can be very truthful, you can be honest, you can talk your mind out. I think it's very important.
Mm.
Shailene, earlier on, you also mentioned about your work, and one thing I have noticed is over the past few years, um, what has happened in the workplace is employers are always trying to get more out of you. And I think it's my advice to a lot of people is push back, say no. If you can't do it, say no. Your mental health is really important. And sometimes it's easy to say this, but long term it's easier to say and push back for your own self. That's
Yeah.
one thing I would say.
Yeah. I mean, what I share here is, you know, what work or business wants is they want results. They want it faster, they want it better, and they want it cheaper. And they don't want to often invest in doing this. So with changes we're seeing, you've got one person doing three people's work compared to when there was three people doing those different jobs. And more is being demanded of us. And if we succumb to that, we're going to be exhausted and we're going to be stressed. And it's going to mean we've got less focus, less work-life balance, productivity, health, and happiness. So those are some of the impacts. But if we are able to create our boundaries, do work which we enjoy, is plays with our strengths, gives us some challenge, but not overwhelm us. We need challenge, and we grow into that challenge, and we also need support. And there's a fantastic quote: our growth is on the border of support and challenge. So you need challenge to grow and need to live, but you need also support to meet that challenge. And if it's too far out of our comfort zone, we struggle. But if we always stay in our comfort zone, life becomes stale. So we do need to be growing like a tree, like plant, like nature is intended, and growing step by step, steadily, bit by bit. And yeah, no pay packet or job is worth your mental health, because
Absolutely.
it's central to mental health. We saw it's one of the corners of those four dimensions, and they're all closely linked and can impact across the board.
Absolutely. Now, thank you for that. It's coming up to 6 o'clock now, so I'm going to wrap up at this point in time. If anyone's got any questions, they can always send the question to me, and I'll forward them on to Shailene.
There's two things I'd like to share before
Sure,
you
Shailene.
wrap up, if you don't mind.
Of course.
So again, on the screen, we've got the 0 to 10, and you're not allowed to use this number 7. If you're, even if you didn't take part right at the beginning, you want to take part now, if you just take a checkpoint and just see where you are on that scale, and you're allowed to use fractions and decimals, and you want to share it, please put it in the chat. But even if you don't want to share it, just check for yourself where you are on that scale. Because again, the more often we ask this, we're raising our awareness. The more often we talk about mental health and loneliness, we're raising our awareness, and we're raising the awareness with others. We're reducing the stigma. We're making it more common to be able to talk about it and to raise that awareness, to be aware of it, and then to help each other. So that's one thing. And the final thing is this link here, link tree, where it's got the dot between the T and the E's, /Happy Life Habits. If you use that, you're able to go to the mental health awareness article I mentioned, where it's got various bits and pieces of information and videos, and a link to this video, once it's available, will be on the YouTube site that Umesh looks after, and I'll also put a link into that article, as well as other things that, if you want to connect, or Facebook group is there. And we have a newsletter, and if you really are looking to go deeper and build habits in gratitude and journaling, I have a course which helps with that. And there was one person who suffers from depression who's come on the course and is able to better deal with his depression. So that's something I remembered, Harish, that you had asked about the depression. So those are things which can happen. But I also just thank again Umesh and the audience for joining us today and taking part and giving me the opportunity to share about these things.
Thank you so much, Shailin. And just before before we all leave, I'd like to just say a final quote, which I read and I thought it was really, really uh, interesting. It's by Emma Sue, and what she says is, if you are feeling lonely, note that you will always have books to nurture your mind, hands to create and explore, wind to calm your soul, breath to soothe your nerves, nature to soak your worries away, and stars to decorate your dreams. With that, thank you very much, Shailene, and thank you to everybody for joining today. See you next week. Thank you. Bye bye.